The nature of real property. Before we start talking about real property, we need to understand just what this notion is this thing we call property. Actually, property is not a thing. Property is an abstract idea. It's not things, it's rights that we have in those things. And so when I say that car is my car, what I'm saying is that car over there, I have legal rights in it. What are these rights? Well, it's what we call the bundle of rights. And there are three main rights that go into this bundle of rights. The right to possess, and what that means is that, I can control it. And probably more importantly, I can exclude others from having anything to do with it, exclude others from possessing it, exclude others from making decisions on it. It's mine. The second right is the right to use it. That means I have the right to enjoy it, to use it the way I want to use it, get enjoyment from it. And then the third right is I can dispose of it. If I own something, if it's this property that I own, I can dispose of it in any of several ways. I can sell it, I can give it away, I can leave it to someone in a will or choose not to. It's my decision. So that's what we call bundle of rights. Now, when we talk about property in general, again, we have several categories of property. Real property, and real property is going to be land and anything permanently attached to the land. That includes this thing we call fixtures. Fixtures, they used to be what we call personal property, and we'll get to personal property in just a moment. But this whole issue of fixtures here is so very, very important when it comes to the sale of real property and real property transactions, as to whether or not something that is, let's say in the house, is going to be included in the sale. Are the curtain rods included? Is the ceiling fan included? What about a special stained glass window? Is that included in the sale, or does the seller get to take it with them? So this whole notion of fixtures is so very, very important. Let's look at personal property just for a moment here. If it's not real property, and once again, real property is land and everything permanently attached to the land, well then it's going to be personal property. Personal property is everything else. And we can further break down personal property into two categories, tangible and intangible. Now, tangible personal property sometimes are called chattels, or sometimes they're called goods. But the point here is that you can touch them, you can feel them, they have a physical existence to them. They are movable. And examples would be furniture, an automobile, clothing, jewelry. Things like that are all tangible personal property. Intangible personal property are going to be those things that do not have a physical existence to them, like stock or money in the bank or a copyright or a patent. Sure, you can touch the stock certificate, you can touch and feel the checkbook, but that's not where the real value is. The real value in these types of intangible personal properties, they're intangible. You can't touch them. There is no physical existence. Back to fixtures. When you take an item of personal property, usually tangible, it would be tangible personal property because you can touch it, feel it, you move it, you attach it to the real property, and depending on how well it is affixed to the real property, how permanent that connection is, and also depending on how much damage would be caused if it's removed, well, those are factors that determine whether or not it is a fixture and would pass with the real property with any property transaction or when the real property changes hands. So once again, fixtures very, very important in real property. So when we talk about real property, just what is it that a owner of real property owns? Well, there's an old legal saying that real property is the surface of the land, and everything below the surface of the land extending down to the center of the earth and upward from the surface to the skies, to the stars above, infinite. And so that's an old common law way of looking at just what is it that we own. Well, in a more practical standpoint, that means below the surface, well, that includes mineral rights, oil, gas, coal, and even water. A landowner would have rights, some rights, and it differs from state to state, and it also differs from what kind of water we're talking about, the source of the water. But a landowner also has rights to water that's located on or under their property. And like I said, some of those rights may be curtailed or more limited in some areas than others, depending on what state you're in and the source of the water, whether it's a lake that's going across your land, a river, stream, or if it's wholly contained there. It does maybe make a difference depending on where you are. Airspace. An owner of land has rights to the airspace above their property as well. And then finally, when we're talking about, well, what is it that I own if I own real property? There's this other dimension, in addition to the physical above the surface, below the surface aspect of it. In addition to that, there's this other aspect of time. How long do I own my property? What type of ownership do I have? And what we call this are estates. What kind of an estate in this real property do I own? And we recognize 6 estates in real property. The absolute best one is what we call fee simple absolute, or sometimes simply called fee simple. That's how most people own property. And what it means is that you own your property forever and ever and ever. If you were to live forever, it's yours forever, and you can forever do what you want to, whether you can forever exclude people, use it, and forever you do have that right to dispose of it. Well, we don't live forever. But when we do dispose of it through our will or give it away, we are bestowing on the person that we're granting it to the same fee simple absolute. So it's theirs now forever and ever and ever. Fee simple absolute. That's what we want when you buy property, and that generally, and that's the absolute best estate you can have. The next one we have is something called a fee simple determinable, and you won't see that too often, but it basically is putting a limit on the property, saying it's your property so long as you use it only for residential purposes, for example. But if you cease using it for residential purposes, then it reverts back to me. Fee simple on a condition subsequent is going to be something similar to that. You put a condition on it. I can convey the property to you so long as you remain unmarried, but if you marry, then I have a right to come back in and claim the property. So the main difference here is that there's a right to enter and reclaim the property if the condition is met, whereas over here it just happens automatically. Life estate, that's fairly common. You'll see life estate particularly in regard to estate planning. What that is we say that you own the property for your lifetime or someone else's lifetime that you've designated. But then at the end of that life estate, at the end of that lifetime, then it will then pass to the people who we call have the remainder interest. And so a typical thing would be, I'm an elderly person, I have a farm, I want to continue living on the farm, so I'm going to, but I want my kids to end up with the farm, so I'm going to convey to my children the farm, but I'm going to keep for myself a life estate. So that means when I die, they have what is called a remainder interest, and they'll have the farm. And guess what? What estate do they now have upon my death? That's right, fee simple absolute. See how that works together? And then an estate for years, it's somewhat common, particularly in commercial applications where someone would have like a 99-year lease or a 50-year, they call it a lease, but really the land is conveyed to that person for that period of time. And they have that entire bundle of rights for that period of time. And then the last one is what we call an estate at will, and where the landowner grants at will someone else to have that bundle of rights, but it can be taken away at will, very temporary. And those are the basics of real property concepts.